Dr. Phil has gotten himself into a lot of trouble for something he said on Fox News a couple days ago. Lots of backlash over this.
250 people a year die from poverty. And the poverty line is getting such that more and more people are going to fall below that because the economy is crashing around us. And they're doing that because people are dying from the coronavirus. I get that. But look, the fact of the matter is we have people dying. 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 a year from swimming pools. But we don't shut the country down for that. But yet we're doing it for this. And the fallout is going to last for years because people's lives are being destroyed.
Yeah, first of all, Dr. Phil really needs to get himself some professional lighting in his office there, or his study, because the lighting just makes him look undead. But anyway, a few other things, more importantly. As you can imagine, obviously, the backlash he's getting here is intense. And on the critical side of it, I do have to say that, first of all, I agree with the critics on a few points. The first one being 360,000 people a year definitely don't die from swimming pools. Okay, it's not 360,000. That would be like that's the entire population of Lexington, Kentucky, drowning in a swimming pool every single year, and that's not the case. I think he probably, I haven't looked up the number myself. What he probably did is he added a zero, and so I'm thinking the real number is probably like 3,600 or something like that. Also, I agree with the people asking why Dr. Phil is being brought on Fox News to talk about the virus in the first place. You know, we don't really need to hear from TV doctors on this thing at all. And besides, Dr. Phil isn't even that kind of doctor. He's not a medical doctor. Now, if you want to talk to him about the psychological effects of the shutdown, that could be interesting. Maybe they did talk about that. But to get him pontificating on these other things, it's a little bit embarrassing. But in his defense, the point he's making here is actually perfectly reasonable. And it's a point that one side of the discussion is just utterly determined to misinterpret, mischaracterize, misconstrue. The one thing they won't do is actually listen to the point being made and respond to it. Yes, swimming pools are not the same as a virus. Swimming pool deaths are not contagious, for one. And yes, many more people have died from the virus than will die in a swimming pool, assuming the number isn't really 360,000, which I'm pretty sure it isn't. So yes, that's all true. That is true. But that's not the point. That is not the point of the comparison. The point is not to compare swimming pools to viruses. Not the point. What Dr. Phil is trying to do here is make a point about the concept of shutting stuff down to save lives. That's all. And he's correctly saying that, hey, and it's an interesting example when you think about it, because he's saying, hey, if we shut swimming pools down, if we ban them, which we could do, right? There is no doubt that we would save lives, and not a few. Probably not 360,000, but we would probably save thousands of lives. There's no denying that. Nobody can deny that. Two things. Every state in the union could pass a law banning swimming pools, both private swimming pools and public swimming pools. That could happen. And if it did happen, you would save thousands of people who would have otherwise, many of them children, who would have otherwise drowned in those pools. But we don't do that. We could do it, and it would save lives. We don't do it. Why? In the case of swimming pools, what we're saying as a society, apparently, is that the death the swimming pools cause is a price worth paying for the fun and enjoyment we get from them. We are not, another way of putting it, we are not willing to sacrifice the enjoyment we get from pools in order to save thousands of lives. We don't put it that way. We would never phrase it that way. We don't think of it that way. When you're taking a dip in the pool in the summer, you don't think to yourself, oh, I don't care about those children who are drowning. You don't think that. But if you would oppose any measure to ban swimming pools across the board, then you do think that the enjoyment you get and people get from swimming pools is worth the price of people dying. That is what you think. That is your argument, whether you say it or not. And if we say that about swimming pools, Is it really so unreasonable to say that we don't want to sacrifice the whole economy and the livelihoods of millions and millions of people for the sake of this threat from the virus? Even though the threat is much more substantial, even though it's contagious where swimming pools are not, even though more people are dying, I get all of that. But the thing that we're sacrificing is also much more significant than a swimming pool. And that's it, you know, and it's a good response, and it's a good question anyway. You know, it's not a definitive sort of debunking of the other side's argument, but it's an interesting question, ethical question for them to grapple with. If you're saying that you're in favor of shutting things down to save lives, then why not this? You know, how about just answer the question rather than getting all smarmy about, oh, you idiot for asking, swimming pools aren't contagious. Yeah, I know that. We all understand that. How about just answer the ethical question if you can? Meanwhile, speaking of of outrage at TV doctors, Dr. Oz was also on Fox. So they had, in the span of 2 days, they had both of these guys on. And again, why is Fox having all these TV doctors on instead of actual practicing doctors? That's a good question. And I'm certainly no fan of Dr. Oz, to put it mildly. He is a licensed doctor, but he's not a practicing doctor. And he's also, through his show and over the years, has promoted all kinds of quackery. So I'm not a fan of Dr. Oz. But he's suffering his own backlash because he allegedly said that we should send kids back to school because only 2 to 3% of the children will die from the coronavirus if we do that, and that's acceptable to him. Allegedly, he said that. And also, according to leftists all over social media and in the media, this proves that pro-lifers are hypocrites. Okay, so lots going on here. Let's first go and take a look at the segment.
Dr. Oz, help us. Well, first, we need our mojo back. Let's start with things that are really critical to the nation where we think we might be able to open without getting into a lot of trouble. I tell you, schools are a very appetizing opportunity. I just saw a nice piece in The Lancet arguing that the opening of schools may only cost us 2 to 3% in terms of total mortality. And, you know, that's any life is a life lost. But to get every child back into a school where they're safely being educated, being fed, and making the most out of their lives with a theoretical risk in the backside, it might be a trade-off some folks would consider. We need to get industry back, supply lines. I mean, things that we can do without putting the nation at risk.
So a good example of how this is being used by the left is this viral post from a Facebook group for a group called the Other 98%, which is a socialist far left organization and website. Look at their description of what he said. They said there are 56.6 million children in school in the U.S. That's 1.1 to 1.6 million dead kids. This is considered an acceptable trade-off for pro-life Republicans. Now, as I said, this has been all over social media. This particular talking point of blaming this on pro-lifers and all. And it just shows you the level of dishonesty that we're dealing with here. To begin with, Dr. Oz did not say that 2 to 3% of children dying is acceptable. He did not say that. He wasn't talking about children. He said very clearly total mortality, not child mortality. The mortality rate for children is vanishingly small. So there's no scenario at all where 1 million kids die from this. Even if we intentionally infected every single kid in the country with this, still 1 million of them would not die. And I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying that could not be the point Dr. Oz was making because it doesn't work with the mortality rate anyway. But he said total mortality. He's talking about not childhood mortality, total mortality. That's what he was referring to. And second of all, what the hell do pro-lifers have to do with this? Dr. Oz is pro-abortion. He had a celebrity on his show not too long ago to brag about her abortion and sell her book about it, okay? He's pro-abortion. He is not a pro-life Republican. So a pro-abortion TV doctor says that the uptick in total mortality could be low enough to justify opening up schools. And from the left, that becomes pro-lifers arguing that 1 million dead kids are okay. Just think about the dishonesty of that. It's wrong on every level. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.